Right now, you're on one of two paths. Path one is the forgettable brand. You post content randomly, hoping that something's gonna stick. People have no idea who you are or what you do, so they do not engage and they definitely don't buy. Now, path number two is the intentional brand. This is where you own what people associate with you, and your content builds trust and moves people toward a decision. If you're on path number one right now, this course is going to get you onto path number two and save you years and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of mistakes. And if you have identified that you're on path number two, odds are you've probably hit a ceiling that you have not been able to break through. This course is gonna help you smash through that ceiling and actually hit the scale that you've been wanting. This course is not just theory. It's built from real execution and my 16 years of experience in building brands online. So here's what we're gonna cover. Section one is branding. Section number two is gonna be content strategy. Section number three is gonna be building your team. And finally, in section four, we're gonna talk about monetizing your brand. So the first section is branding. And I think that we should start off with some definitions here so that we are on the same page and everything that we discuss moving forward is from the same understanding. I define branding as a pairing of things. I define good branding as an intentional pairing of relevant things done consistently. And what you get from that is the byproduct, which is brand. Brand is when the audience inherently associates those things together. Let's use the most classic example known to man. Nike and Michael Jordan. Nike entered the basketball market and they wanted to have their audience or customers associate them with athletic greatness, specifically within the basketball industry. So what did they do? They intentionally paired themselves with greatness in basketball. Michael Jordan. I can't think of another name that's more synonymous with victory, with winning, with greatness. Or take Gary Vaynerchuk in content. The man literally wrote a book called Crush It. I don't even remember when it came out, I think 2009. And he was talking about how people are going to make money talking about the Smurfs on YouTube. The man is synonymous with content. And over time, his actions done repetitively have led us to draw that association. He has intentionally paired himself with content, among many other things. Or my absolute favorite that I always have to inject at any chance I get, Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson, for many years in their marketing, has intentionally paired themselves with freedom. And so what is the association that the customer base draws upon when they think of Harley Davidson? Freedom, the open road, tearing off their suit and going out and hitting the road. And so ultimately, what we are trying to do is think of what are the associations that we want our audience to inherently draw when they think of our name. And the beauty of this is it actually makes it operational for you. All you have to do is deliberately and intentionally pair yourself with the association that you want your audience to make. It takes all of the woo-woo fluffy magic out of what brand is, and it makes it something that you can actually fucking do. Now, real quick, my team and I put a lot of effort into building out this course and a lot of accompanying worksheets and playbooks. So please take advantage of them. What you're gonna notice is at the bottom of the screen here, we're gonna have little icons that tell you what sheet and how you can download it. I would highly encourage you, please download these sheets and follow along. Now that we know what brand and branding are, we need to define what your brand is. Now, your brand actually exists whether you define it or not. Your audience might be defining it for you. I would rather we be intentional and take control. The first step in defining your brand is defining your desired outcome. I like to work from the end goal and reverse engineer our way backwards. And so here is how I actually reverse engineer our desired outcome to today. It is called the Brand Journey Framework. And it's just 4 simple questions, but I can't tell you how many people have told me how impactful this was and gave them the exact roadmap of how to go about building their brand. So question number 1, again, like I said, we're starting from the end in mind and working our way back. So what is our desired outcome? What do we want to have happen? Question number 2 is, what do I have to be known for in order for that to happen? Question number 3 is, what do I have to do in order to be known for that? Unfortunately, building a brand isn't just about things that we say, it's about our actions. And so if we want to be known for something, in order to be known for it, we got to do the shit to be known for it. And then finally, the last question takes us to right now. What do I have to learn in order to do that. So if I'm going to do things in order to be known for something to then get my desired outcome, well, right now, I might not know how to do those things. And so this gives you day one exactly what to do. You need to learn these specific items, and then you need to do those things, and then you will become known for those things, and then eventually the desired outcome occurs. If you have clarity on your outcome, this ensures that every decision you make along the way lines up with what you want to have happen. The majority of people that are building their brand online, that are posting content, I promise you, 99.9% of them have no idea what they're trying to accomplish with their content, with their brand. And so what they're doing is they're wandering aimlessly. There's an amazing example that I love to share from Alice in Wonderland. There's a moment where Alice comes to a fork in the road. There's two different directions she can go. And the cat, Chester the cat, I believe is his name, and he's sitting in the tree. And she says, "Which way should I go?" And he goes, "Well, where are you trying to end up?" And she says, "I don't know." And the cat responds with something so powerful. He says, "Well, then either way will take you there." If you do not have a desired outcome that you are making your decisions off of, you're gonna go somewhere, but it might not be the place that you want to be. Now, after you define your desired outcome, I would argue probably the most important part of defining your brand is defining your associations, or the associations that you desire to have. Ask yourself, what do I want to be associated with? What do I want the audience to think of when they hear my name? Here's an example. Do you want your name to be tied to business, trustworthiness, or mental well-being? Everything you create should reinforce those associations. This is where intentionality in branding starts. Everything you create should reinforce those associations. This right here is where intentionality in branding starts. So a very meta example here is that I am creating this course and the content that we're going to be putting out to intentionally pair Ralston, my consulting firm, with value, with scaling brands, with understanding attention, with building brands that not only scale, but last and build trustworthiness within their community. This is literally what I'm doing. I'm putting together a massive course right now that is going to outline all of this and consistently pair myself with those attributes that I want you to draw upon when you hear about Ralston Consulting. So we're going to continue to create content like this, talking about scaling your brand. We are intentionally pairing ourselves with the relevant thing, scaling brands, and we're going to do that consistently through our content. Now, we just went over what you want to be associated with. I would argue this next part is far more important and something that 99.9% of people completely ignore, which is, what do you not want to be associated with? A lot of people make the mistake of assuming that brand is only about what you want to have happen. But a lot of what building a brand and a successful brand is, especially in today's saturated market where there's so many people online talking about the same subject matter as you can stand out by what you choose not to associate with. This is ultimately how you protect your brand. This is how you keep it from diluting and being misinterpreted. Think of how many people you see online whose reputation probably has nothing to do with what they wanted or what their desire was. Oftentimes, that is a byproduct of not being intentional with what they are not going to associate with. If you don't actively shape your associations, your audience is going to do it for you. Now, this next little example and explanation here is going to get a little technical. So I'm actually going to read off of the screen to the right of the camera right now so that I don't mess this up, because I think it's really important and I want to make sure that we go through this exactly how I meant to. If we believe that branding is a pairing of things and that good branding is an intentional pairing of relevant things done consistently, and that then creates brand, which is when the audience inherently associates those things together, then we're on the same page of what brand and branding is. But what you'll notice is intentional is not a good or bad statement. Intentional doesn't mean right or good, meaning you could be intentional with pairing your brand, but with the wrong things done consistently. Unfortunately, what this ends up leading to is the audience drawing the association between your brand and those wrong things. Here's an example that I have to give a qualifier for. I have some pretty strong views and opinions on some of the online creators in the business education space. All love and respect to everyone. Everyone can do their own thing. This is Caleb Ralston's individual opinion. Strongly believed, loosely held. There are some very scammy, sketchy motherfuckers in the online education space. They are untrustworthy and they make content trying to ladder up to selling some bullshit course online. If you choose to consistently appear in content with them, whether it's them inviting you on their podcast or you guys doing a collab video together, if you do that consistently, AKA you intentionally pair yourself with the scam artist online, the untrustworthy character, the snake oil salesman, guess what happens? If you do that consistently, your audience will start to inherently associate you with that crowd. Is that good for trust? No, not at all. In fact, this is some of the biggest problems that you see with a lot of creators in the business education space right now. There are a lot of individuals that actually have a lot of value and a lot of good to add into the world and education and able to literally show people a whole new way to approach their business, their career. But the problem is they go on all these fucking podcasts with these individuals that I cannot trust. And by doing that enough times, I no longer feel that I can trust that individual. So as much as you want to pair yourself with the right things, please be diligent about what you choose not to associate with. If you get a bad feeling in your gut, if you don't think that it's the right move, it's not worth the exposure. I'm gonna open up the kimono here for a second. I have people right now, not a lot, because I'm not that interesting, but I have a couple of people that have been asking me to come onto their podcasts. And so far, I've said yes to everyone. But there are some individuals out there that I know will probably eventually reach out and ask me to come on the show. Now, if they have that kind of a brand, I will choose to not go on the show, even if it's the biggest audience that I could get in front of. Because ultimately, awareness is not worth the trade. What are those people going to be aware of? They're going to be aware of you in light of that association. All right, we've defined our brand. So now we need to position it. Now your goal isn't to just blend in. You actually want to find what is missing in your industry and own that gap. So it might be the information that you have. It might be the philosophy you have around a certain subject matter, like branding, for example. Or it might be your personality and your unique take on the same information. You might just be able to reach a whole different audience that wasn't able to connect with some of the other creators in that space. Ultimately, what you are looking for is the gap of what is missing, and then you fill it. Now, how do you go about finding out what is missing, or how do you own that gap? Well, ask yourself these two questions. What are the people that are currently creating content in the space that I'm wanting to occupy? What are they saying that I disagree with? How can I take what has been taught for years or shared for years and bring a fresh perspective to the table? Here's a really good example. If everyone in your industry is focusing on going viral and getting lots of views and always doing that, maybe leaning into building a long-term trust-built brand will stand out. That's what I'm trying to do here, right? A lot of my counterparts, who I love and respect, they emphasize virality and getting views. And there's a lot of benefit to that. But where I'm coming in and kind of filling the gap is there's not a lot of people online talking, especially in the form of free content like this, in a way that shares with you how to build a brand that lasts. If you just emphasize views, for example, the moment the algorithm changes, nobody's going and searching for your name. On the flip side, if you build a brand that has trustworthiness and deposits a lot of goodwill into the marketplace, the moment the algorithm changes, your audience will be searching for you. And so that is a prime example of me contrasting myself with the others in the industry. That's me noticing a gap where nobody's talking about this, or very few, and me wanting to fill it, not only with my unique perspectives and philosophies, my experience doing this for 16 years, but also maybe a unique and quirky personality that some people will really hate, and then a tiny few of you might actually resonate with. Now, the other way to bring a fresh perspective is to share your story. So what I would encourage you to look at is what is different about your story than everybody else's. Now, the obvious answer is everybody's story is different, right? But what is it that makes you uniquely you, that you can present all of your information, your beliefs through that lens? Ultimately, your story is your brand's secret weapon. This is what makes you unique and makes you stand out from everybody else in the crowd. Nobody else has the same come up story or origin story that you do. An exercise to help you do this is actually to list out pivotal moments in your story, in your life, challenges you've overcome, turning points in your career, that moment where you got laid off at your job and then all of a sudden ended up finding the next gig and it's the greatest thing ever, and any unique experiences that have shaped your perspective. For me, working with Gary Vaynerchuk completely changed my perspective. I had a completely different understanding of what it meant to create content online with your audience in mind first, rather than making shit to make you look good. Share that shit in your content. And ultimately, like, stories resonate way more with people than you saying typical tropes and attributes like hardworking or innovative or hustling. Nobody gives a fuck about that. They want to hear the story behind the hard work. For example, instead of me being like, I'm a hard worker, I would tell the story of when I was editing Gary Vee's Trash Talk series and how I would come in on Sunday and start editing 12 to 14 hours a day, Sunday through Thursday. And then I would arrive in the office at 6 a.m. on Thursday, and I would not leave the office until 2 p.m. on Friday. I'm not gonna do the math for you right now, but I believe that's about 32 hours straight. The story, and if I went more into detail, would be far more compelling than me just telling you about working hard or how I work hard. Another example is, instead of Jeff Bezos talking about how resourceful he is, tell the story about how he used a fucking door as his desk. Nothing will say resourceful more than telling that story. Share your stories. That is what your audience is going to resonate with. Now, for those of you who have made content online, the thing that you're probably very aware of is there's a lot of skepticism. There are a lot of objections that the audience has towards your content, especially if you are in the education space. Legitimately, the majority of people watching your content are thinking the entire time, why would I trust this? Does this actually work? Okay, cool, that worked for you, but does it work for me? How would it work in this scenario? Have you done this in multiple different industries? They are constantly thinking of their objections to what you have to say. And oftentimes, those objections and that skepticism appears in the comments. Here's what I would like you to do. Instead of allowing that to take place in your comments, start looking at your comment section, getting a greater understanding of the skepticism and objections that commonly occur within your audience, and start addressing them in the content. Just like a great VSL overcomes objections before a prospect hops on a sales call, treat your content the same way. Why would you not try to overcome the objections that your audience is going to have if ultimately your goal is to educate and change the actions of your audience after they consume your content? Why would you make it harder for them to do that? Let's make it easier by overcoming any objection or skepticism they're going to have about what you're saying in the content itself. If you address the skepticism and the objections proactively in your content, what you do is you build more trust and credibility. When you answer the questions before they're even asked, you remove friction. And then it makes it easier for your audience to actually change their actions and be educated. All right, the next one is don't be a fucking robot. This is something that a lot of people making content online really struggle with, and I completely understand why. There's this weird object that you're talking into called a camera and a lens, and it's like this very freaky ordeal, right? Even right now, I am doing my best to be a human, not a robot, right? And bring my personality into this content rather than just monotone giving the information that I want to. And part of being a human is sharing not only the wins, but also the losses. Share the failures that you've had along the way and the lessons that you learned from those failures. Think about it. The friend that you have that's always sharing how great everything is and how they just keep winning, eventually, one, they just become kind of fucking annoying, right? But two, do you really believe that? Do you really believe that life is so perfect and that everything is going exactly their way? No. Imagine not knowing this individual. So from afar, your audience is going to be even more skeptical of you if all you're doing is sharing all your W's. On the flip side, if you are vulnerable and you share your losses, what you will find is a lot more people will trust you and connect with you and relate with you. I actually think that losses are more relatable than wins. And we can learn a lot more from losses than maybe we can learn from wins. And ultimately, if you share your losses and the lessons learned from them, you help your audience potentially, if they choose to take action, avoid making those same mistakes. A really good example of this is someone that I worked for several years ago. When I started with her, her whole audience thought that she was a robot and viewed her as not human. She just came across as like an information, overload, and she was just sharing her knowledge, which was a lot, but it had no substance or personality to it. And so when I started working with her, it was my number one goal to show her human side, to take it from just information, just to like show personality, right? And this individual, she had an amazing personality. She was hilarious, so funny, quirky, everything. But you would never know that just watching the content. In fact, a lot of people would meet her in real life and be like, you're so much nicer and funnier than I expected you to be. I actually kind of expected you to be a jerk. But like, in no way was that the case. But you wouldn't know it from the content she was making. And so I really encourage you to do your best to bring your true self, bring your whole self into your content. Seriously, it will make you stand out. There's nobody else that's actually like you. An example for sharing your failures is in my first YouTube video, I share a failure. I share the story of how one of my main clients cut my monthly compensation in half. And I had to go and fire my friends that I had hired. That was a real shot to my ego and isn't my favorite thing to share necessarily, but I think one, there's a big lesson that I shared that is accompanied with that failure, but also I think that you guys watching it probably, if you did see that video, felt a little bit closer to me because I appeared more human. That transparency ultimately builds trust way faster than somebody who is just constantly posturing and trying to show you how fucking great they are. This next one is actually really tough for a lot of people to do, and I completely understand why. The point is to listen to your audience. The hard part or the difficulty in this is there's a lot of people that make content that get a decent amount of hate in their comments. They get a lot of people that are just frankly being fucking assholes. And what I would encourage you to do is do your best to ignore those individuals. And real quick, just like an anecdote on this is, if you ignore the praise, you can ignore the hate. If you get really high off of the praise when people applaud you in the comments, you're gonna be very vulnerable to being very depressed when you see the hateful comments that are tearing you down. But aside from the hateful comments, the other comments that you have in your posts are actually incredible insights into how you should go about navigating your brand and the content that you create. Especially in the early days, I would encourage you to look at the individuals that know you, your friends, coworkers, and any audience that you may already have. What are they associating you with? What do they praise you for? What do they applaud you for? What do they admire in you? And what keeps them wanting to either continue hanging out with you, talking to you? What keeps them coming back? What you want to do is use this feedback to refine your positioning and ultimately know what you can double down on. A really big example for me is, and this will sound weird coming out of my mouth, but please take this with like a humble tone that I hope I have here. Something very interesting that I've noticed is when I hop on Zoom calls with potential clients or with clients, like 90% of the calls end with one or more of the members on the other team mentioning how much they love my energy and personality. Again, it feels really weird for me to say this, so please hear it correctly. But I started noticing that and I realized, man, to my point earlier, I should really make sure that I bring that same personality and energy into the content that I make. Because it's who I am. It's how I actually roll. Like I'll make a statement and then I do a little side comment on it. I do that with all my friends or my family all the time. I do it on client calls, on discovery calls, anything. And so if that is something that people are resonating with and liking and giving me real-time feedback on, that they like that and enjoy it, why the fuck would I not involve that in my content? And so this is using my audience, and technically I wouldn't even call them my audience, but essentially they are, and using their feedback to refine how I present myself in the content, which ultimately the way I'm gonna present myself is being fully me. Now, another example is if your audience really values your practical advice, your no BS, no nonsense, straight to the point advice, I would really encourage you to lean into it If you start seeing a trend emerging where people are, adding more filler, fluff, and, comfort creators, that's great, but that's not you. Don't follow a trend just because it's a trend. Stay true to who you are and what your audience appreciates most about what you are putting out. Another example of listening to your audience and actually making a very good change is there was another client that I had worked with a while back, and they fell into this pattern of honestly getting way too intense in their content and only talking about really one subject matter. They didn't really diversify. And they were just hammering one message over and over and over that the audience wasn't resonating with. It wasn't like, you have your haters that are speaking out and stuff, but ultimately you're telling your truth. No, like the majority of the audience was giving a lot of pushback. And so what this individual did is they listened to the audience. And by listening to the audience, they started to add more context. They didn't change their belief. They didn't change what they were saying. They rounded out what they were saying and gave more context as to why they were pushing this message so much. So again, listen to your audience and let it shape how you present your ideas, philosophies, and beliefs. Don't have it change your beliefs. Don't cater what you're saying just to the audience. Nobody likes that. That's what we call a politician. Nobody wants that. And now the long anticipated brand story framework. Your brand story isn't just a before and after transformation. It's a series of intentional decisions that shape how people see you. Now, I tend to believe that most story frameworks are a little too rigid to actually be practically used, especially for many different use cases. I think that what they end up doing is they assume that every brand has some dramatic aha moment, right? Some big problem that they have to solve. They assume that the founder story is the most important one. They assume that a brand's identity will never evolve. But great brands aren't built on a singular moment. They're built on consistency, distinction, and connecting with the right audience over time. So here's a storytelling framework that I believe works in all cases. Forget the problem, transformation, outcome framework, okay? I believe that that is too narrow. Instead, here is the 3-part brand story framework. Number 1 is the catalyst. This is why your brand exists. Every brand, I believe, starts because something needed to change. This isn't necessarily always a struggle. It might be an opportunity or a gap in the market. For example, and I don't know this for sure, but I can make some pretty good assumptions here. I don't think Phil Knight started Nike just to be rich. If he did, there's plenty of other businesses he could have started that had a higher likelihood of success. I believe he saw that no other companies were fulfilling the demand and meeting the needs that the market had. In order to determine what your catalyst is, I would ask yourself these 3 questions. What needs to change? What do you see that others don't? What's that opportunity that you see so clearly that nobody else can see? And why do you feel the need to act on it? If you answer these 3 questions, this is your catalyst for your brand. This is why your brand exists. Number 2 is the core truth. This is what makes you or your company different than everybody else in your space. A strong brand stands out. It doesn't blend in. Blending in ultimately leads to you being forgotten. A lot of people misunderstand this, and there's a lot of them online right now. It doesn't mean that it's controversy for controversial sake. That's where you just get the annoyingly loud people on the internet that nobody likes. That is not what I'm saying here. What I am saying is it means having a core conviction that is different than everyone else in the market. And not only having that core conviction, but sharing it publicly with the world. A great example of this is actually an artist by the name of Russ. Russ has some very unique views on how musicians should go about navigating their career. He is very, very strong about how artists should remain independent and own the rights to their music. He believes that this allows them to have creative control, but to also profit more off of their hard work. What does he do with that? He shares those beliefs in the form of his music. He literally talks about it in his music, but then also when he does interviews on podcasts or various news networks, he reinforces this and shares it heavily. So to determine your core truth, ask yourself these 3 questions. What do I believe that others do not? What is it about my personality that stands out? And think about this. We talked about it earlier, but What do people compliment you on that you can lean into, that you can double down on? The example I gave earlier was that people on Zoom calls, client calls and stuff like that, would mention that they love my energy and my personality. So what am I doing in my content, in building my brand? Leaning into that and really trying to highlight and bring my somewhat quirky and weird personality into the content. And number 3, why would the audience care about this? How does this impact them? What value does it bring for them? If you answer these 3 questions, you'll have your core truth. And number 3, the proof. This is how you reinforce your identity over and over and over. I believe that your brand is not what you say, it's what you do and prove over and over again. Strong brands don't just have one past success story. They have an ongoing pattern of credibility. Another Gary example is that he doesn't just talk about volume of content and the importance of it. He's proved it for like 15 plus years. And he reinforces the credibility of this statement by talking about what he's done not only for his personal brand, but all the brands that VaynerMedia works with for the Super Bowl campaigns, for example. The majority of their Super Bowl campaigns are determined off of high volume social content that they do throughout the year to test learnings, see what the audience resonates with, and that's what they run with on the Super Bowl. And he shares those stories. So he is reinforcing the credibility over and over and over. So 3 questions to ask yourself are, how does every piece of content I make reinforce the associations I want people to make with me? What case studies or examples can I share that establish my credibility? And number 3, if someone hears your name, what's the first thing that they think of? So here's a fun example using myself, the Catalyst. I saw brands trying to scale via just views and impressions, but struggling to actually build trust with their audience. It wasn't that the problem was the content. The problem was they were lacking clarity on the big picture strategy and what they wanted to have happen with their brand. The core truth is that I believe that a strong brand is built by the intentional pairing of relevant things done consistently, not just getting virality and getting a ton of views and impressions. And the proof is that I've built many different brands that scale businesses to millions and millions of dollars in revenue, and I show you how to do it completely for free via my content. So you can build your brand story in 3 very simple steps. It's not rocket science. It's not the complicated bullshit that a lot of my counterparts make it to be so that they can sell you some bullshit course. The Catalyst, what do you see that others do not? The core truth, what do you believe that others might not believe? And the proof, how do you continually reinforce that identity every single day, not only through what you're saying, but through your actions? If you nail these, your brand won't just have a story, your brand will have loyalty. All right, now for something that a lot of people struggle with, which is picking your topic. Like, what are we gonna talk about here? And this is a question that I get from many people. I've gotten this question hundreds, if not thousands of times over the last couple of years. And there's a lot of different opinions online about what or how you go about picking your topics. I have kind of a nuanced belief on this and view on it. And it's one that changes and evolves over time. I encourage you to start narrow. I personally believe that early trust is built off of being great at one specific thing and talking about that same specific thing. We all have that friend who is the best at everything, and we know that they're not good at any of it. By them talking all about how great they are at all of these different subjects and all these different skills, we pretty much assume that they're not good at any of them. Contrary to that is the friend who only talks about woodworking and how they love carving this beautiful chair or putting together this amazing desk for their parents or whatever. The person who is obsessed around one thing and speaks about that ad nauseum is the individual who we believe has credibility and is actually good at what they're talking about. They have expertise. A great example of this is that when Gary started making content online forever ago, I mean, he was super fucking early, I think 2006, 2007 on YouTube, he was the wine guy. He made content around wine. That's what he knew super well. Now, at the time, he also understood business and marketing, but he didn't talk about that. He built his base and credibility off of a subject matter that he was world class at. Over time, he began to expand that, right? He began to speak to the different business practices and marketing techniques that he used to build his dad's wine and liquor store. But in the beginning, all of his content for the first several years on YouTube was Wine Library TV, where he was tasting and giving reviews on various wines. And then what you started to see is he would start to pop up at South by Southwest and start talking more about marketing. And then one day, all of a sudden, this amazing speech gets dropped on YouTube, accompanied with a book called Crush It, where he informed everyone of his beliefs on marketing and utilizing this new crazy thing called social media. And so what you see there is Gary started very narrow. And as his experience and knowledge expanded, so did the subject matter that he covered in his content. Again, if you try to talk about everything in the beginning, you will dilute the power of what you're speaking to. So what you're gonna notice is I'm not gonna sit here talking about business tactics. I'm not gonna talk about sales techniques. You're not gonna hear me referencing customer success techniques and strategies, because that's not my wheelhouse. That's not my expertise. My expertise is on scaling brands and using organic content strategy to accomplish that. And so that's what you're gonna hear me talk about. But what may happen is over the next couple of years, as I gain more experience in other areas, you might watch my brand and my subject matter and topics evolve. Now, the natural question that I imagine is coming up for you right now is, well, how do I know when it is the right time to expand? I feel like maybe right now I'm at that point. Or on the flip side, I'm so far from ever expanding, like I want to only talk about this subject matter for the rest of my life. One, you should actually know what you're talking about before you talk about it. So if you haven't actually gotten to a point of excellence and world class, then I don't know that I would talk about this new subject matter. I don't think I would bring it into the table, because what value are you going to be providing the audience by sharing something that you don't really know much about? Now, another thing that you can look at is once you're known for a specific topic and you get consistent engagement and positive feedback from the audience on that, then you can consider to start to expand. I would encourage you to take on adjacent topics, not something that is completely different. For example, I'm not going to be talking about brand strategy and organic content strategy, and then next week start talking about breath work. That would be completely off the wall and make no sense, right? So there would be too much of a jump for my audience to trust me on this new subject matter, because there's nothing about what I've been talking about right now that would give me credibility for this new subject matter. To use Gary as the same example, when he was talking about wine and building the brand and the company online, by him doing that and gaining success with the company, it gave him credibility to speak into marketing and to share those strategies, because he had demonstrated them in actual use. He put those strategies that he shared with us to practice to build his business, and that gave him credibility to jump into the next section or the next topic in his career. Another one is look at your audience and what they're asking for. If you start noticing that they're asking for additional information on something that you don't really cover that much, but you've maybe hinted at or has been displayed in a minor way in your content, well, maybe that is time for you to start speaking to that subject matter. For example, if all of you watching this started asking me a ton about my Harley Davidson and all the little intricacies of all the upgrades that I've made and the performance and the handling and how I go on long road trips, I would gladly answer those questions. Now, when thinking about expanding, I would encourage you to do it strategically. So let's walk through what that looks like. A great example of a company that went about expanding their product line is Amazon. Amazon started by selling books, right? And now they sell, obviously, a lot more than just books. I mean, if we look at what I'm wearing right now, about 3/4 of everything I have on was purchased off of Amazon. But ultimately, even though Amazon has expanded to all these various different products, they haven't lost their core identity with books. And I would argue them acquiring Audible was actually a big step in re-engaging that audience. They now have what I would probably believe is the biggest audiobook platform out there. And so they returned or reinforced, rather than returned, they reinforced their roots by doing that. So in expanding, never lose sight of your core identity and where you started. For another example, to keep running with the Gary Vee example, that man continues to this day to bring back Wine Library TV on occasions. He still brings wine into his content here and there. He pays ode and homage to the OG Gary Vee. Another great example, similar to Amazon and Gary, of returning to your roots is Crayola. As of February 2025, when we're filming this, Crayola announced that they're bringing back 8 discontinued colors that they had taken off the market. Some of them, as most recently as 2017, some of them go back to like 1990. One, bringing it back is a nostalgic play. And that's obviously gonna resonate with a lot of the audience, a lot of the parents, honestly, that have kids now. Like I grew up with Crayola, and my generation is of the age where like we have kids now. And so there's definitely a good play there. But I think what this shows is a company and a brand can evolve and add new product lines, add new things in, and change over time. But I do believe there is a lot of power in always holding to your core, to your root. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every year, every day, every month you have to do that, but it is good, and I think it means a lot to the day one and OG members or audience or customers of yours for you to return to that. Another example, actually, that I'll generalize, because a lot of creators do this, is if you're a creator or a musician, the content or music you were making day one in the early days, that's what a lot of your day one fans fell in love with. And like brands, a lot of musicians and artists and creators evolve. And they evolve what they create, right? We all know, I'm really big into hardcore music as an example. And I can't tell you, actually, a prime example of this, just thought of right now, is Knocked Loose. In the hardcore space, Knocked Loose started as a hardcore band. They had that like grungy local basement sound. But Knocked Loose has blown the fuck up. And as they continue to get bigger, they have haters that call them sellouts and all of this stuff. Well, the cool thing that Knocked Loose does at their shows is they still play their original tracks. They still play the gospel, and that shit fucking slaps every single time. And it allows for us day one fans to have that nostalgic feeling and make sure that we still feel attached to not only what the band has evolved into, but where the band came from. So a takeaway here for those of you that have a more established brand is maybe consider bringing back like a nostalgic play. Like return to your roots a little bit. If you had a different content format style that you used to do, or like the musician example, if you had an earlier, more raw sound, maybe consider releasing a project that taps into that nostalgic play. Nostalgia is a very big winner amongst humans. A pro tip on this is to expand in layers, not leaps. So don't do anything massive. Every jump, every new topic you add should really feel natural to your audience. Again, like the example I gave earlier, it shouldn't feel like talking about brand and organic content strategy and then going to breath work. Like it should be, if I wanted to get to breath work, I should probably inch my way over to that point rather than having just a complete black and white change. Now, based on the niche you're in and your desired associations, that's what's going to inform the topics that you want to explore and expand on. Now, a key reminder in this, and this is where a lot of you are potentially gonna get hung up, so this is why I'm saying this. Don't think of it as a rule. When you're picking these topics, these are guidelines that you can follow that make it easier for you to create content. But don't make it an absolute rule. As much as I was saying that it'd be weird for me to make content around brand or organic content strategy and then immediately jump to breath work, sure, that might be really abrupt and kind of like gnarly for the audience, but ultimately our goal is to do this for a long time. And so if that is something that you do want to talk about, fuck it, just jump and do it. By no means are these rules to follow. These are guidelines to help you and make this easier for you, not something that you have to overthink 24/7. In fact, I'm gonna double down on this real quick because I think a lot of people sit down with a brand strategist or whatever and they build out these content pillars. And then they always say, well, if it doesn't fall within the content pillar, we can't talk about it. But here's the thing. When Trevor and I sat down and identified what we were going to be talking about in our content, we didn't necessarily say Harley Davidsons. But as you can probably tell if you're at this point in the video, I reference Harley a lot. And I want to make content around my Harleys as well. Is it one of my content pillars? No, it's not. But if I want to make a video about my Harley, I'm going to fucking do it because I enjoy it. And I think that what it does do is it rounds out my brand and makes me more interesting. I'm not just somebody who cares about brand and organic content. I also love my motorcycle and love to travel on it. I love to customize it. This is what will make you interesting and will cause you to actually stand out from your competitors. So the key here is don't be rigid, stay flexible. So if you're trying to figure this out, here's 3 questions that might help you. First question is, what am I genuinely passionate about discussing? If you can't tell by now, I'm very passionate about brand strategy. It probably comes through in my tone here. That's what you want to talk about. You want to talk about something that you're going to want to talk about, because when you do, that passion comes through and people will connect with it. And they will probably feel like you are more convicted about what you are saying and believe you more and actually take action on what you are saying rather than just sitting and listening. Number 2 is what will resonate with my audience most right now. So for me, for example, when I talk about brand strategy, something that is definitely a need in the audience that I have is organic content strategy. I'm gonna talk far less over the next year about my paid media strategy because that's something that a lot of people that I have spoken to over the last 5 years need less help on. They have more experience in that. On the contrary, a lot of people look at organic content on social as like this black box, magical, mysterious thing that they do not understand. And so that's why a lot of the content that we're gonna put out this year is gonna be around organic content strategy. And I would argue number 3 is the most important of the 3 questions. What will cause my audience to change their actions the most? Like I've said multiple times in this video, what you don't want when you're making educational content is for people to just be passively consuming and do nothing about it. You want them to take action. So what can I speak to and how can I speak about it in a way that makes it easy for my audience to then listen and take action on what I am saying? So to make sure that we're not getting confused here, I just want to real quick emphasize, I'm not saying talk about one thing. I don't want you to talk about just one thing. I want you to emphasize your one thing. So if we're looking at a pie, 80% of the pie should be that one main thing you want to be known for. But use the other 20% to round yourself out, to round your company out, and be more fucking human. This is how other people will relate to you. Here's an example. Look at your significant other or a friend of yours, right? If you talk about one thing to them all the time, 24/7, guess what? They're probably gonna fucking hate you. They're gonna get bored of you. And even more so, you are probably gonna hate you and get bored of yourself. Sure, it's totally okay to spend 80% of your time talking about that one thing. 80% of what I'm talking about here is brand strategy, and I'm going to continue doing that. But the other 20, I am going to utilize to round me out and make me more human. I like to call this interest stacking. Here's a really good example. All of us probably at one point in our life started at a normal job. And day one, the only thing we have in common with our coworkers is that we work for this organization. But as you start to get more comfortable, you probably tend to reveal a few more things about yourself, interests you have. Let's say, for example, you reveal the fact that you're a huge Kendrick Lamar fan. And this is during the great Kendrick and Drake beef. And somebody else on your team, Sarah, also is like, I love Kendrick as well. Suddenly, you go from having one thing in common, we both work for this company, to having 2 things in common. We work for this company and we both love Kendrick Lamar. What ends up happening there is you become work homies, work friends, right? It becomes more than just coworkers. And as you start to learn more things that you have in common with each other, you may go from being work friends to friends, even to the point where once you move on from the organization, you're still friends. I think of the same exact principle in building your brand online. The more interests and things that you find interesting that you talk about in your content, you give your audience more at-bats to connect with you because they're like, I also like that thing. and how unique that there's this intersection of somebody who loves human optimization and making their body healthier, but they're also a complete computer science nerd. That is a very interesting intersection. So what you want to do is actually give your audience more at-bats. So again, spend 80% of your time talking about the core subject, the core topic. Ideally, this is something that is in line with your offers that you have and drives revenue and profitability for yourself or your company. And then the other 20%, talk about your interests. Give your audience at-bats to connect with you. An example that I love to use for this, whether we love him or we hate him, is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan does an incredible job about talking about all the different interests that he has, right? Conspiracy theories, politics, human optimization, hunting, UFC, comedy. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so if you're interested in one of those things, you might be interested in his podcast. If you're interested in 2, 3, or 4 of those things, you're probably a fucking super fan. The only way people would know that they're a super fan or become a super fan, though, is if he talks about those things. If he just stuck to MMA and comedy, there'd be far less at bats for his audience to become obsessed. All right, we are on to content. So we've covered branding and what brand is, and we've gone pretty in depth on that. And that is laying the groundwork and giving us the direction that we are now going to take with our content. I like to think of it as we've established our brand and now content is what we will do to amplify the brand. And one thing I want to give you as kind of a qualifier or a statement up front that will influence everything that we talk about from here on out is that I like to build a content strategy in the same way that a great personal trainer designs a great training program for their clients. A great example is right now, I am gonna start getting back into lifting. And if I were to go into the gym and immediately start working on Ronnie Coleman's training routine, well, I'd be fucked. I would probably injure myself and I definitely wouldn't stick with it. And so every good personal trainer knows that the best fitness routine or best training routine is one that you are gonna stick with for a long time. We get the most results the longer we stick with it. Content is the exact same way. A lot of people make the mistake of trying to do what Mr. Beast does or what Gary Vee does or what all these different creators online that you see are doing. Some of them go really high volume, some of them go extremely high production. That is a great goal to aspire to, but do not start off that way. You will burn out fucking quick and you won't stick with it. And so everything that we design and we talk about, I want you to take and determine what do I feel like I can actually consistently stick with so that I get the results I'm looking for. So with that in mind, we are now going to start by choosing our content medium. This is the type of content, the style of content that you are going to emphasize. Now, I want to be very clear before we go into it. I think you should do all of these. But what I want you to determine is what is going to be your 80%. What are you going to lean into the most? Picking the right content medium is about playing to your strengths while ensuring long-term sustainability. You want to be able to do this for a very long time, like I said at the top. So we have 4 different mediums that we're going to be discussing here. We have written content, we have video content, audio content, and graphic/design content. And so we're going to start with written content first. Now, written typically is best for LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Facebook, email, newsletters, ebooks, articles, those kinds of things. Honestly, the best version of this is somebody who feels they are capable of taking high value information, maybe even really dense information and concepts, and being able to articulate it in a written format that is concise and high value per sentence. When I'm thinking about video content, I'm thinking about value per second. I would like to think about value per word or value per sentence when it's coming to written. It's February 2025 when we're filming this. Right now, LinkedIn is, in my opinion, the hottest platform to be on. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a creator, a musician, an artist, whatever you are, LinkedIn is actually the platform that is super underrated because everyone assumes it's just business people talking about their careers, but it's not. We're at the point now where the fucking homie is posting a photo of him and his family in the minivan going on a road trip. And then the next post is some career update. And so we're actually at the point now where LinkedIn is no longer just a resume and job status update site. It is a social media platform. however you want to call it, interest media, social media, whatever, it is now getting to the point where it has matured. And so people are behaving the way that they used to on Facebook back in like 2013, 2014. And the beauty of it is right now, if you comment on somebody's post, all of their connections see it. And so it's actually got true virality. And I'm emphasizing this right now. We'll touch on LinkedIn a lot more later, but written content is fucking murdering on LinkedIn. If you understand how to package and format your written post, if you get the hook right, it's incredible right now. And so if you feel you have the skill set to do written well, this is a great moment in time for you. Now, if you're wondering if this is gonna be a good medium for you to pick, well, here's a couple of questions that you can ask yourself. Do you enjoy sitting down and writing or even journaling? Are you already doing this, right? Like, do you have a habit of every morning or every night before you go to bed, you're already journaling? Well, you might already have maybe 70% of the skills required, and also you might have 100% of the interest in the medium required to do it. A really crucial question that I think a lot of people don't ask themselves and never evaluate their written content off of is, can you write this down, this concept, and have it make sense without saying it out loud? Some of the worst LinkedIn posts, you can tell they're bad because the person who wrote it has to explain what they're saying in the written. If you have to explain it or add commentary, it is not a good post and you should throw it in the trash. And then once you have a post written or an article written, do you like the idea of refining it, editing it, reviewing it? I'll tell you, when I work on a LinkedIn post, I probably do about 10 different versions minimum of it, where I reread it, write it. I mean, I just go back and forth on it. And so I think something very similar to what we'll talk about here in video content, as an editor, you have to be comfortable watching the same moment hundreds of times, right? Every editor watching heard that big time. Well, it's the same with editing written content. And so you need to be comfortable with doing that. That's how you can evaluate whether or not written content is going to be a good medium for you to emphasize. The next one is video content. Video content is the highest leverage medium that you can engage in. With video, you get the main video that you filmed. Let's say it's a long form like this. Well, we can also pull short form clips from it. We can also extract the audio and make that a podcast. We can also take the transcript and then take little quotes out of the transcript that were punchy or pithy and put those out on Threads, Twitter, Facebook status update as an image with the copy on it. There's a lot you can do. You can then take the transcript and use it as your starting point to write LinkedIn posts if you want, or articles, or a newsletter. So video is the highest leverage because you put the effort of filming this and then you're able to redistribute or repurpose that content for so many different mediums, for so many different platforms. But like I said at the top, if you right now watching this shudder at the idea of being on camera and it sounds like fucking awful, well, I would encourage you, don't do it yet. Again, we want to be doing this for a very, very long time. And so we want to create a system that we enjoy and we look forward to, not something that we dread and get anxiety when we see it on the calendar. Now, video content includes everything, right? This is YouTube long form, YouTube short form, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn video tab, Facebook Reels, Spotify video now. Like everything is pretty much pushing video these days. And so again, not only are you able to repurpose it in so many ways, but you're able to feed so many different platforms the type of content or the medium of content that they are asking for. Now, if you're wondering who is video best for, well, honestly, it's really if you feel comfortable being in front of the camera, if you feel like you have the ability to articulate fairly clearly. I mean, look at me, I'm not necessarily the best on camera or anything, but like that's what we're doing here. So if you feel that, or you're not feeling like you're an absolute natural at it, but you're willing to improve and work on it in real time, in public, like myself, then okay, cool. I would highly encourage you to take on video. You get so much more out of it. One thing that I left out is you can also extract stills from the video. So you can also use those for social posts. I mean, the amount that you can get for the amount you put in is fucking limitless. A couple of questions that you can ask yourself when evaluating if video is your medium are you comfortable on camera, or are you at least willing to try and improve in public over time? Can you handle negative feedback from people calling out your lack of abilities to articulate or be entertaining on camera? If so, fucking do it. Do you get excited about visuals and grabbing attention? Okay, video is probably a good one for you. If not, maybe it's down the road. And the last question is, can you speak concisely without rambling? Or again, if you can't, but you're comfortable learning on the job, learning in public, then okay, cool. Let's tackle it. Let's do it. The reason why we have this last question is because one of the things that I've noticed in a lot of talent that I've filmed with over the years is that when you are extremely knowledgeable on a subject matter, something happens when you start talking about it. I call it bunny brain. I get it all the time. I start saying something and then my brain fires off this next idea. And it's like this little rabbit trail that I end up following. And it can cause you to ramble. And it can cause you to veer off topic. And if you find yourself doing that, that is not necessarily a reason to not do video content. That just means you need to have a better editor that can help make sure that the content stays focused. Now, the next one is audio content. And this is mainly podcasts. That's really what I would want you to think about when you're thinking about audio content. And really, it's exactly the same as video, except for you remove the discomfort of staring into this lens, this eternal black abyss that you just have no idea what the reaction is on the other side. Because the majority of you don't have an amazing cameraman behind it like Trevor, who is nodding and giving me affirmation that what I'm saying is good. So it is fucking freaky to sit in front of a camera, stare into the lens and talk. It's a lot easier to just have a mic in front of you and just riff. And so I would recommend, if the idea of video is exciting and terrifying at the same time, maybe consider for a period of time starting with a podcast. And what I have found is when people do this, they very quickly realize, oh, I might be able to do this video thing. It's not that bad making content after all. And so it allows you to see yourself in a very similar scenario and recognize that it's not that terrifying, not that freaky. It's actually very high reward. Maybe I could do the same thing with video. So if video was something that seemed interesting to you, but you get a lot of anxiety and fear that pops up in your mind and your body when you think about it, then I would strongly consider starting with a podcast. 3 questions to ask yourself here are, do you feel confident speaking without a visual element? If you decide to do a podcast, that's amazing. What we are missing is a sensory input. There is no visuals for the viewer to be able to help understand what you are saying. And so if you're explaining a really in-depth, complicated concept, you have no visual aid to help illustrate what you are saying. And so you have to use your words to be able to articulate and paint the picture for your audience. This is more difficult. And so it's not like podcasting is just easier than video. I think a lot of people actually underestimate what goes into a top podcast. They think, well, I mean, it doesn't require any visuals, so that makes it a lot easier. But that means that your descriptions and the way you articulate your information has to be even more clear. The next question is, do you enjoy deeper conversations or deeper dives into one specific subject? I find that I prefer longer form podcasts personally. And I think that if you look at the top charts, yes, there are short episodes and shows that don't do like hour-plus long podcasts. But I would say the majority of the top 100 are a little bit longer than 20 minutes, for example. And so if you feel comfortable being able to go deep on a subject matter for that long, I think this would be a great medium for you. And the last one is, does your voice have enough energy and clarity to keep people engaged? A lot of people would hear this and think, well, I don't have that interesting sounding of a voice. Well, bullshit. I disagree. I think one, the cadence in which you speak, if you've noticed, sometimes when I talk really fast, then I slow down, I talk louder, and then I bring it down. I'm always trying to emphasize certain things. And so when you go on a fast pattern and then slow down, for example, it allows the audience to understand you're trying to emphasize something. It's a pattern interrupt. So there's a lot of different techniques. There's a million creators on YouTube here that can show you how to be more engaging with how you communicate. But I actually want to take a slightly different approach to this. Throughout this course, I've mentioned kind of my life philosophy, which is taking whatever is given to you and using it as your advantage, even if it was viewed as a disadvantage by most people. If you have a monotone voice, I would actually lean into that and I would make that your bit Again, what a lot of people would view as a disadvantage or a weakness, I think you can make that your thing. Honestly, some of my favorite podcasts and comedians are very monotone and sarcastic. And I think that that makes for a very interesting show. So again, whatever you see right now as the reason why you shouldn't do it, I would argue is probably the very reason why you should do it. Now, the last medium is visual/graphic content. What this looks like is infographics, carousels, PDFs that you upload to LinkedIn as a carousel, that's kind of the hack there, or anything that is design heavy. Now, a lot of people are gonna hear this and think, well, that's just for designers. I'm not a designer. Well, one, there's a million fucking tools out there that can take a complete novice with design and make them look like, fairly intermediate. There's Canva, there's Figma, there's all these Adobe programs. With AI and how it's evolving right now, I mean, we're almost at the point where my fucking grandma could design a really dope carousel for Instagram. Like, it's not that difficult, okay? The real thing here is it's not necessarily you designing it. You might have a designer that you work with. It doesn't always have to be you implementing it. But I think a lot of people that are gonna resonate with this are individuals who don't like video content, but want to be able to explain and articulate their thoughts utilizing not just words, but visuals. Something that's working really well right now in February 2025 on Instagram is carousels. Carousels are fucking murdering. And I think the simpler, the better. And this is where you can pair a visual and written word. So instead of just having to explain things through a blog post or a LinkedIn post, you have two different ways to be able to explain the concept. 3 questions to ask yourself if you're considering visual or graphic content. Are you good at or curious about tools like I mentioned? Canva, Adobe, Figma, any of those. Number 2, can you simplify complex concepts into a visual? Tiny little side note, an amazing example of this is an Instagram account. I believe it's called Visualize Value. This individual, whoever they are, I don't know them, does an amazing job of taking pretty high level complex concepts and making them into unbelievably simple and very easy to understand visuals. And I think the audience really appreciates the way that they are able to do that. And third, do you enjoy the process of making content look great, looking polished? This is not necessary. You could literally fucking draw shit on a piece of paper, take a photo of it and upload it. That's actually, as a side note, something that is currently working really well online is drawing something or creating something physical in the real world, taking a photo of it and uploading it. You can do whatever you want here. But if you do have a love for refining visuals, this might be an interesting medium for you to explore. All right, so we've chosen our medium or mediums that we feel comfortable creating in. Now, some of you might choose all 4 of those. That's what I'm doing. I highly encourage it. If you feel like you have either the team around you, bandwidth, or skill set, or ideally all 3, then yeah, by all means, use all 4 of them. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to choose one of them if the idea of doing all 4 feels overwhelming in the beginning. Because again, we're not trying to jump to Ronnie Coleman's training routine. We're not trying to jump to Mr. Beast's content output, okay? We're trying to do one thing at a time to start to gain momentum and stick with this for a long time. So now that we've picked our medium or mediums, it's time to choose our platforms. What I recommend people do is prioritize 2 to 3 platforms. I don't want you trying to crush across all the different platforms. I know a lot of people out there talk about post everywhere, post all the time, and that's a strategy, and that's fine. I would actually discourage you from doing that. I think that you gain a lot more by picking, let's say, 2 platforms that you're going to learn heavily and really emphasize original content for, making content specific for that platform. More on that in a little bit. The reason why I say 2 or 3 rather than 1 is you want to avoid single channel, single platform risk. Here's a prime example that we just recently went through. Again, we're filming this in February 2025. Just a month ago, we had this wonderful 12-hour period where TikTok completely disappeared in the US. Nobody could download it, they couldn't access it or anything. Guess what happened? Complete terror. Everyone was freaking the fuck out. Or I should say, everyone whose business or income was tied solely to TikTok. And more than likely, They were the individuals who found a lot of success on TikTok and then never chose to build on other platforms to diversify their reach. And by doing that, they were unbelievably vulnerable. Now, I'm not saying that I think that the US government is going to start like banning all of these apps. I do not think that. But what I do know is that algorithms change. The way that platforms behave and serve your content to your audience is always changing. I mean, if you were to look at how many tweaks Instagram makes to their algorithm and the way that content is served, it's insane. And the real is that it's changing all the time for different people. You and I are getting different updates at different times. You have features available to you that I do not have, and vice versa. And so I really encourage you, don't try and post on all the different platforms. What I would encourage you to do though is make sure that you aren't tied to one single platform. Now, what I do like to do is, I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd, so I like this analogy. I like the Eye of Sauron approach. I do like to, of my 2 or 3 that I'm prioritizing, put more emphasis or more priority and resources towards one at a time. But I try to rotate between, let's say I pick 3, I try to rotate between those 3. And so I think of the other 2 on maintenance mode while I'm focused on YouTube, let's say. And then maybe I get YouTube into maintenance mode and I move over to LinkedIn. Now, how am I going about this? Because we're at a very wild time in my life where I am starting to create content, as you can tell right now. This is the first time in my life where I have started to make consistent content for myself, not for the talent I'm working with. And so if you were to look at my social media profiles right now, you would probably see that YouTube, TikTok, X, Threads, all these different platforms, I have less than like 4,000 followers on all of them. Most of them less than 2,000. And then on Instagram, I have like 68,000 followers. And so if you were assuming that I would start on Instagram, that's a very fair assumption. But actually, what I've done is I've picked 4 platforms that I'm gonna prioritize. Now, I am recommending that you do 2 or 3. I've been in this game for 16 years, so there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. I wanna make sure that that's very clear. Do more of what I say in this, not as much of what I do. So what I actually did is when we first started making content, I started with LinkedIn. And the reason why is because I believed that the majority of my potential clients were on LinkedIn more than Instagram. I also felt more comfortable with LinkedIn and Instagram. And so those were the 2 platforms I started with. So we started on LinkedIn, made a couple posts, and then we did a post on Instagram. And I would encourage you to do the same. Start where you feel comfortable. A lot of people really push the whole get out of your comfort zone. No, fuck that shit. Not in the beginning. In the beginning, you want to build the habit of doing it. Like, I remember when I was really into powerlifting, a lot of times when my buddies wanted to get into lifting and were trying to figure out how, I would tell them, fucking go to the gym for 10 minutes, 5 days a week. If you just build the habit of driving to the gym, you're gonna fucking do it. That's usually the issue. And it's the same here. Build the habit of making and posting your content. Make it as easy as possible. Now, what we are going to do is we're starting to expand. So like we're doing right now, we're filming long form YouTube content. And so we're going to expand from just LinkedIn and Instagram to YouTube and a podcast. And the reason why I want to do that is I believe that short form content is amazing to drive awareness. And I think it's super powerful and very effective to get brand recognition. I view long form as the place where conversion actually happens. This is where we're able to truly demonstrate our excellence and expertise. Okay, so for you, if you're watching this and you're considering whether or not to do long form or short form content, well, short form has a lower barrier to entry. So it allows you to start to get the repetitions in and, like I said earlier, build that habit. But eventually, I would encourage you to implement 1 or 2 long form styles, either YouTube long form video or long form podcasts. Ideally both, like I'm doing. And the reason why is because the more time somebody spends with you, 1, the more they're gonna see your expertise and your knowledge, but 2, there is this whole sunk cost fallacy. And the way it works is the more time somebody spends with you, the more willing they are to actually act on an offer that you present them. For the very few of you watching this that have bought a Harley Davidson or probably any other vehicle, I just only buy Harleys, their finance team has this very interesting tactic that they do. They have you fill out all this paperwork and then they literally, I guarantee they get the information, they run your credit, they get all of that within fucking seconds. And they make you sit there for like 10 or 15 minutes just talking to the sales associate. Then what they do is they take you on a tour through the whole dealership. And all they're trying to do is get you to invest more time in the dealership so that you feel like, well, I don't want to waste my time now. I might as well do this transaction. There's obviously a lot more that goes into it, but I view long form content the same. The more time your audience spends with you, the more likely they are to transact or convert on your offer. So what is the point here? Start where you're comfortable. If you're already active on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, wherever, then I would just use that to start. Again, we want to build the muscle and the habit of making and posting content. And I emphasize posting because a lot of you make and then it sits on your fucking iPhoto album on your phone and you never actually put it out. The next question that I would ask yourself when trying to figure out which platform do I feel most comfortable on is, where do you naturally spend the most of your time? Like, if you spend a lot of time scrolling on TikTok, you probably understand what content does well on TikTok. And if you go from just doom scrolling to literally consuming the same shit, but with a more strategic mindset and thinking, okay, why did I like watching this video? And you start taking notes on that, you're going to keep track of best practices that then you can start to implement into your own content. The third question is, where is your audience? Back to the exercise we did, the brand journey framework, right? We created our desired outcome and then we reverse engineered from there to today. Well, based on what our desired outcome is, who are we needing to reach in order for that to occur? And where do we believe, it's a hypothesis, that they exist or they live the most? For me, we're building a consulting firm where we work with entrepreneurs, creators, entertainers to help build their brands. And a lot of them happen to be on LinkedIn very actively. And so that's why we started with LinkedIn as our platform of choice, because it was a hypothesis of mine that we had more qualified potential leads existing on LinkedIn than, let's say, Instagram, for example. And then finally, I would ask yourself, are they on TikTok for quick, engaging content, or are they on YouTube for more long-form deep dives into one specific subject matter? Or are they fucking around on LinkedIn trying to be one of those thought leaders right now? Basically, you want to make an educated guess on where you think your audience is and then test it, monitor it. Are you getting actual leads? Are people reaching out to you, inquiring about what you do? If not, there's two potential options. One, your content sucks and nobody gives a fuck. Two, maybe you picked the wrong platform. Now, once we've determined what medium we like, what platform we're gonna wanna work on, okay, cool. We now have a good understanding and baseline of what we are skilled at. Once you realize that, double the fuck down on it. If you decided you're gonna do video and written, but man, your video content is just not performing and your written is going really well, I would encourage you not to eliminate video, but reduce the amount of effort you put towards your video content and increase the amount for the written content. There are special moments in time. And when you are popping on a platform, that is not the time, in my opinion, to go about trying to level up other skill sets. That is the time where you double down and you pour gas on the fucking thing that you are actually good at and can consistently put out that your audience deems as high quality and high value. Now, on the flip side, if you're confident on video and you feel like you're able to articulate your thoughts, you're entertaining, engaging, well then double down on either short form or long form video. Again, it's whatever you feel you are best at, you should be leaning into that heavily. And like I said earlier, if you prefer audio, start a fucking podcast. You'll eventually, I think, get to a point where you feel comfortable doing video, and then you're doing a higher leverage activity. The next thing is look at your results and don't listen to your ego. I'm just gonna be unbelievably vulnerable and transparent here. I have been seeing the footage from this course, and I actually feel like I look fat as fuck in this. I feel like I've gained weight. I would encourage you to push past some of that ego bullshit, some of those insecurities. I understand why they're there. I get it, trust me. But if you are gaining traction and getting engagement in your content and people are resonating with it, who gives a fuck how you think you look? More than likely, people aren't even thinking about that. Like the real is, I'm sure none of you even thought of that. Maybe you did, but probably didn't until I just said it. And so now I just, brought that to your attention. If I allowed my ego to dictate what we did, we would probably not release any of the content we've made so far. And so what I would encourage you to do is look and track your metrics, look at the engagement, look at the results you're getting, and stop listening to that little demon on your shoulder that keeps telling you how weird your voice sounds, how fat you look, how tired you look, how weird you sound, whatever it is, whatever that inner fucked up voice is, that is not what is propelling you towards your goals. Another thing that I would really encourage you to focus on is that a small, correct audience that is engaged is so much more powerful than having a massive audience of people that have no idea what the fuck you're doing and could give a shit about it. For example, if you were to look at my Instagram page, I have 68,000 followers. Nowadays, that's fucking nothing. But back when Instagram first started, that was a lot. But those followers are not engaged with me. I got them like 10 years ago off of my landscape photography. And so a lot of you watching this probably have 500 to 1,000 followers, but those followers might actually be very engaged in your subject matter and very interested in the offer you have. Whereas if you look at mine, all of them follow me, or the majority of them followed me for Pacific Northwest landscape photography that I was doing 10 years ago. And so now I'm gonna have to go through the process of converting people to my new content, and I'm gonna lose a shitload of people. And so there's so many creators online that have these massive, I know many people with millions of followers that make very little off of their social media content. I also know a lot of people that have less than 10,000 followers that are making millions of dollars a year off of their following. Why? Because those 5,000 people that follow them are their target audience, their potential customers. So again, don't look at your ego of the inflated numbers, the big follower count, so that when your friends see it, they're really impressed. No, who gives a shit about that? You wanna make sure that you are growing and acquiring the correct audience. So please do not be discouraged if you don't have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. There are plenty of people out there with less than 10,000 that are making more money than you could ever dream of. Now, another thing is you want to track the performance on the platform. That is an indicator that you are making content that the platform prefers, and so people will see it and engage with it. And ultimately, this is probably, especially for the people early on in their solopreneur or business days, or a creator, this is how people are aware of your offer. Okay, so it's important for you to play the game. But what I would really encourage you to do is actually pay more attention to conversions. So if you are a musician, are more people streaming your music? If you have a clothing brand, are more people buying your hoodies? If you're a video editor, are more people hiring you for various gigs? If you're an investor, are more companies coming to you for investment opportunities rather than you having to reach out to them? Because time and time again, what I have seen people do, and it's a huge mistake, is they build their whole brand and content based on performing well on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, and they never build it based on actually converting to sales or to streams. This is a huge mistake because unless I have this completely incorrect, the majority of you probably watching this aren't just trying to be famous for famous sake. You're trying to drive awareness that leads to a desired outcome. And if you don't optimize around the desired outcome, what you end up doing is you're gonna waste 1, 2, maybe 3 years and lots of money and time chasing some vanity metric that doesn't actually improve your bottom line. The key here is not to think of it as one or the other. It's both. You need to make sure that you are paying close attention to how you're performing on the platform so that they can see your shit and become aware of what you have to offer. But then also make sure you are optimizing your content that leads to action. I would rather have 30, 40% less likes and views and subscribers or followers, but have that audience convert at a higher percentage than have millions of followers and have a very low percentage of conversion. That's my personal preference. Because again, we're not making this content here for me to become famous. That is in no way the goal at all. I actually really hope that doesn't ever happen. My goal is purely to become known with my potential customers. And that's it. I don't need everybody to know who I am. And so make sure that you are mapping and building out your strategy and optimizing your content for the correct thing. All right, now we're gonna determine your posting cadence. This is a big debate, big question that a lot of people have. I get it. Honestly, I probably got this question at least 300 times in the last year, no joke. And it's a debate that occurs heavily online, and a lot of different top creators that you should look up to have differing opinions here. And so I'm gonna share with you my philosophy here. Before we dive into the framework for determining your posting cadence, and then another framework for how to increase the volume and increase your cadence, I wanna give you my overarching philosophy. on quality versus quantity. The great debate has existed probably for the last 8 years online. And I think that a lot of people that enter this debate don't actually define what these two things mean and what they are and what their purpose is. So quantity is something that a lot of people have over-indexed on, I'll say. Okay, they believe that you post a high volume of content in order to gain the most impressions and show up everywhere, having your face in front of people all the time. And that's a beautiful byproduct that occurs from posting a high volume of content. But I actually view volume of content as a tool in what I call the accordion method. The way I like to think of it is, I don't know what quality is, and neither do you. We sit around ideating on a piece of content and we'll say something like, this is a high quality piece. And that ultimately is a subjective opinion. That is you subjectively saying this is high quality. But we don't give a fuck about what you think. We care about what your audience thinks. Your audience is who determines what quality is, not you. And we use volume to acquire that data quicker. If you were to post 10 videos over 30 days, okay, that's one video every 3 days. Cool. If you were to take the same amount of videos and post them in a week, you're going to gain insights faster. And what insights am I talking about? What your audience is resonating with. What are they liking more? What are they commenting on more? What's getting more views? Those are indicators of your audience signaling to you, the creator, hey, I call this higher quality content. Quality does not have anything to do with the fancy shit that we're trying to do here. The lights, the camera, right? Like the set that you're working on. No, fuck that. That has nothing to do with quality. Think about this. Some of the most viral videos, most viewed and engaged with videos ever online are filmed at night in the dark on a fucking cell phone. Like they're grainy, you can barely tell what's going on, right? Quality is a subjective thing. And because it's subjective, I would rather have the audience determine what it is rather than me pontificating on what I think quality is. So again, you post high quantity, high volume content to get the learnings on what your audience says is quality. And then what I believe you do is you compress the accordion. And that's when you start to put more effort per piece of content. We're gonna get into that in a little bit here. I don't wanna spoil the manna right now, but that's my overarching philosophy and kind of the shade, the lens that you can view the rest of this section through. So now that we understand what quality and quantity are, we are going to determine our posting cadence. What I would encourage you to do is first start with the highest leverage platform, okay? What do I mean by the highest leverage platform? Well, one, what are you getting the most results from? Where are you getting your leads? Where are you getting the majority of your engagement, right? What is performing well by the platform standards and by conversion standards? And number two, what platform allows you to create one piece of content that then you're able to repurpose into many different pieces of content? Typically what this looks like is a long form piece of content, AKA this course, right? A YouTube video is going to provide you so much ability to be able to, like I said at the top, clip moments so you can get shorts. You're able to pull the transcript, get quotes, use that transcript to then make a LinkedIn post. You can extract the audio for a podcast. You can then pull stills from the video to use in social posts. It's a very high leverage medium and platform. Now, please, again, I really pushed this in the last section and I'm gonna just continue reinforcing it. If you are tracking conversions, which you should, conversions off platform, if you notice that there's one or two platforms that are leading to a lot more conversions off platform, please double, triple, quadruple down on those platforms. On one of the teams that I was running, we learned when actually looking at the data that YouTube was our #1 lead provider, Instagram was #2, and LinkedIn was #3. But here's the very interesting thing. That was by absolute. But if you look at percentage of audience that is actually converting, LinkedIn was #1 by a fucking mile. It was a way smaller audience because it was a platform that we took on and started really optimizing for way later than YouTube and Instagram. So what we realized is we should allocate far more resources to LinkedIn. If it has a higher percentage of qualified leads coming from it, all we have to do is increase the amount of impressions we're getting, and in theory, that will be the #1 platform, not just by percentage, but by absolute leads. We discovered this at a time when LinkedIn was just starting to emerge as like the next big platform. And so we actually, as a team, had kind of devalued it. We viewed it as an afterthought. It wasn't our number one priority. But the moment that we looked at the data, bing, 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 track your data, the moment we did that, we saw massive returns. All of a sudden, LinkedIn became something that we were putting, we were spending probably $20,000, $30,000 a month just on LinkedIn organic content alone. The next one is actually going further or deeper on what we started this section off on, which is volume for speed and learnings, not just reach. I encourage you in the early days to increase whatever volume you think you need to do right now, increase it. Okay? And the reason why, I said it up top, but I'm gonna reinforce it and emphasize it again. You want to know what your audience deems as quality, and you wanna know that as soon as possible. And so what I would encourage you to do is increase the frequency in which you post. A great example of this is a previous team that I ran. We started our YouTube efforts by posting 3 videos a week. Then we increased it to 5. Now, were these highly optimized YouTube videos? No, I wouldn't even call them edited. They were just trimmed. There was no editing being applied, and there was definitely no graphics or any intentionality to how we crafted the intro, the packaging, nothing. What we were doing though is not trying to optimize because we weren't at that phase yet. We were at the learning acquisition phase. We were trying to understand, what is the audience resonating with the most? What are the questions they're asking? How are they engaging and behaving with this content? What this allows you to do is then determine what they're fucking with and do more of that. And when I say do more of that, I don't necessarily mean more volume. I mean putting more effort per piece. So let's say you were posting 5 YouTube videos a week. That's a lot. What if you took the effort that you put and the time and resources you put into 5 videos a week into 1? And that 1 video was based off of the knowledge and insights that you now have of what your audience has said to you is quality. Sounds like you might be getting some traction and actually start growing and getting subscribers and views. It's crazy. And it actually fucking works. Quality is not your personal preference. Quality is determined by your audience. Plain and fucking simple. One of the biggest traps I see a lot of you making is that you are making the decision for your audience. Maybe you have a piece of content that you've been sitting on and you think, this isn't high quality enough. And you're just not posting it. You're not putting it out there. And you're making the subjective decision that this is not worth your audience's time and they're not gonna get value out of it. But how do you know if you don't put it out, especially in the beginning? I understand mature creators. You get to a point when you are a content creator where you do actually be able, this is not gonna fucking hit. We can't even post this. Nobody's gonna give a shit about this. That does happen. But in the early days, you don't have a fucking clue. You don't know anything about your audience or what they want. You have your perception of what you think they want, but more than likely, it's not that accurate. And so I encourage you, stop guessing, stop making the decision for them, and allow them to tell you what they want. And the last point in determining your content cadence or your upload cadence is avoid the perfect post trap. I like to say that perfect is the enemy of posted. If you're struggling to post daily, yes, me too. I agree with you. Most people can't post daily. That is kind of like an absurd level to just immediately jump into. And so I would encourage you, visit the idea of posting 3 times per week. Visit the idea of posting once a week, once every other week. Look at what we're doing. We're probably gonna be posting 1 long form video on YouTube a month, maybe every 3 weeks or so. But we're putting more effort per piece rather than high volume. Now, Caleb, I thought you just said do high volume in the beginning in order to learn what the audience resonates with. Well, I have a little bit of a leg up, and I'll give you kind of like an insight into that just so that you understand that I'm not bullshitting you. In the last year, I met with over 2,000 businesses and consistently ran question and answer sessions with them. I did a roundtable session with literally 2,000 business owners, and I know what the common questions were. I have a very good pulse on what people are wanting to hear from me based on what they would ask me at these Q&As. I also have been in the industry for a very long time. And so not only do I know what people are wanting, I also know what they need. I know what the majority of the industry is currently saying. Half of these fuckers on YouTube are telling you, a lot of bullshit around how to grow your brand or how to scale your organic content. And I've seen it long enough that now I'm at a point where I'm a little bit fed up, and that's why I'm putting this content out. For you, I would encourage you, unless you have those insights, unless you've met with 2,000 different individuals that map towards your ideal customer, then I would probably start with high volume. But again, if high volume means one post every other week in the beginning, because that's all you can do, then do that. Whatever you can actually put out consistently, please start with that. Don't try and jump to the Ronnie Coleman method and squat 800 pounds when you've never squatted 135. And the last point to that is, again, stop aiming for perfection. Speed wins. So for example, we're filming this course, right? And we've invested a good amount of money into this and a lot of effort. And we have been very intentional with all the little elements, right? Like the set, the lighting, the framing, the way that we're shooting this on 3 different cameras, the audio, like all this shit, right? We're trying to be very cognizant of all of it. But there's been semis that go by. There's been police officers that are, woo, woo, the sirens going by. There's all kinds of shit, and it's not perfect. And we could stop every single time, and we could potentially even decide this isn't the right space. Maybe we should have filmed in something that was more audio friendly. But guess what? Perfect is the enemy of posted. And so we are still going to capture this, put it together, and we are going to post it. And what have we been doing every night after we finish filming? We've been going home and figuring out what we would do differently and how we're going to improve on the next version of this. So what I would encourage you to do is, instead of letting all the different problems or issues you see with the content you're working on right now and using that as a reason to not post, fuck that, post it. And take note of what you're going to do on future pieces that you make. So we've determined our posting cadence, and we're at a point now where we've been doing it consistently. Congratulations, good for you, that's fucking awesome. A lot of people give up after like a week or two. And so if you've made it even like 2 or 3 months of posting, you are in the top 1%. So congrats, you're fucking awesome. I'm proud of you. And I want you to do more. And by more, I mean, I want you to increase your volume. And here's how we're gonna do it. 1, you're going to leverage a content pillar approach. I want you to identify your pillar content. Typically, this is more long form content, okay? So think like a YouTube video, long form, a deep dive thread. Maybe it's a long form written post on LinkedIn, or it's a newsletter that you send out to your email list. Then what you're gonna do is you're going to do what I affectionately call mining. You're gonna go through your long form content and mine for the gold. If it's a newsletter, what you're looking for is bite-sized chunks that are self-contained. So this is a paragraph that you have in your newsletter that you could extract and pull, and it would make sense and be valuable in and of itself without the other context. You're also probably gonna find maybe a quote or two that you could pull from that, okay? And then you could probably also do a version where you take the entire newsletter and you summarize it in, call it 5 or 6 sentences. So a medium form post. On YouTube, if you have a long form YouTube video, well, what you're gonna have is an editor or editors that go through and they're mining for the gold. They're gonna find the moments and extract them that they know are going to perform well and resonate with your audience. Typically, you're looking for a powerful moment that maybe is a slightly contrarian view or is a nuanced take on an already discussed subject. For example, my quality versus quantity moment, I almost guarantee Trevor is going to clip that moment and we'll post it on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Short, all that shit, because that's gonna be a moment that will do well for our audience. Now, this is nothing new. I like to call it the waterfall distribution model, but ultimately, I gotta pay homage to the actual man who came up with this. This is the OG Gary Vee. He came up with the content framework and how he extracts thousands of posts from one long form piece of content. And he's been doing this since, I wanna say like 2015, 2016, right? Like originally it started with releasing Daily V and then clipping moments from that and posting them on Instagram before Reels, TikTok, any of that was a thing. And so here's what I recommend you do. Take your high value content. Let's use a YouTube video, for example. And what you're gonna do is you are going to break this down into short form clips. You're gonna extract quotes that you can put out on Threads and X. You're gonna take the transcript and find a moment that you can rewrite into a LinkedIn post. You're gonna then take that LinkedIn post and post it on Facebook as well. Then one of the shorts that you clipped from that YouTube video, that you post on Instagram, use the LinkedIn post as your caption for that post. Okay, do you see how literally in the moment right now, I'm not looking at notes, I'm literally coming up with this in the moment because there is so much that you can extract from a YouTube long form video. I haven't even gotten to carousels yet. Now, what I want you to do is take the different sections from your YouTube video and make 2 carousel slides per section. Now you gotta simplify it. You can't have a fuckload of text. In fact, the best practice is to have one very basic, very easy to understand image followed by 1-2 sentences at most per slide. And so diving even deeper on it, you wanna make sure that the first 2 slides in your carousel are taken from the hook that you made for the YouTube video. So reinterpret the hook that you made for the YouTube video into the carousel opening 2 slides. The reason why is because when it's served immediately, they're seeing the first tile, the first slide. But if they didn't engage with it, Instagram gives you a second at bat. How nice of them. They're gonna serve the carousel again to your followers, but it's gonna be on slide number 2. So you wanna ensure that you have a hook for 1 and 2. Now, another thing to note is, this is not a rule, it's an observation. Oftentimes, listicles tend to, at least as of February 2025, they do better in carousel form. So if you have a video that is 10 things I learned about investing in my 30s, okay, cool. That's gonna be an amazing, amazing carousel. However, if you have like a really complex deep dive on a subject matter that is like not in any way made for the lay listener or viewer, then I would probably consider maybe just taking one section of that video and then expanding that into a carousel rather than trying to compress an entire video. So when I say taking a YouTube video, please try to stick more towards listicles when you're doing this. Otherwise, you're gonna wanna just take one section of the YouTube video and turn that into the carousel. So in this example, I couldn't even keep track of how many different pieces of content I just listed out. It's easily over 10 pieces of content that we just created off of one video that you filmed. Insane amounts of output for what you put in, AKA very high leverage activity. Now, the next thing that you're gonna wanna do is scale by platform, not all at once. First, we picked our medium, then we picked our platforms, then we determined our posting cadence. Cool, we've been doing that consistently for a while now on 2 or 3 platforms that we determined were our highest priority platforms. Now, that Eye of Sauron approach that I mentioned earlier is really gonna come in handy. Do not try to scale up all 3 or 2 platforms that you are emphasizing at once. If you do this, you won't do any of them well. And so, just like I mentioned with the Eye of Sauron approach, what you're gonna do is, let's say for example, your top 3. You go LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. All right, LinkedIn being number 1, we're going to attack increasing volume there first. So what does that look like? Well, you make sure that YouTube and Instagram are on maintenance mode. They're not gonna go down, but they're not gonna be growing. That is not your emphasis right now. You want those just consistently putting out enough content to keep the current audience engaged. If you grow, amazing, that's a wonderful little surprise, but that is not our goal. Maintain, focus on LinkedIn. And when we're focusing on LinkedIn and scaling this up, you have 2 different ways to scale it up, in my opinion. You can either literally increase the volume of posts you do, or you can increase the amount of effort you put per post. As of February 2025, I actually would encourage you, instead of just increasing the volume, I would start with increasing the amount of effort you put per post. So let's say, for example, you were posting 5 times a week on LinkedIn. I actually would encourage you, as of right now, and this is way different than what I would have said a year ago. I'm very much on the higher effort per piece of content train right now. And so I would take the effort you put into 5 pieces and put it into 3. I am finding you get far more out of a very, very extensive and high value piece of content than you do off of medium value content at a high volume. Here's an example. There was an individual that I worked with, they loved volume, and they wanted to post a minimum of 4 videos a month on YouTube. Now, when we did that, those videos would average around 250,000 views a video, which is really great for most people. But according to our standards, that was actually lower than what we were looking for. Add all of that up together, and that's 1 million views a month. I would argue that 1 video a month that gets 1 million views is way more valuable for both the audience and yourself than the 4 videos that get 250,000 views. Well, Caleb, where did you come to that conclusion? It's the same collective views. It's the same number of views, it's not the same number of eyeballs. Meaning the video that got 1 million views had a high percentage of those views be new audience. These are people that have never consumed your content or rarely consumed your content before. Now, the videos that got 250,000, more than 60 to 70% of the views were from the current audience. And there's nothing wrong with nurturing your current audience. I want to make sure that that's clear. But can you see a massive discrepancy here? It's very clear to me that the 1 million view video once per month has a disproportionate amount of value compared to 250,000 view videos a month. I believe that this is why Mr. Beast, Jimmy Donaldson, went with this method. When he was posting content on YouTube, he wasn't trying to post a video every 3 days. He wasn't trying to post a video every week. He was posting a video every 4 to 8 weeks. There was times where he would go 2 months in between posting a video. Why? Because he was putting so many resources and so much effort into each piece. Because what he knew is, rather than the majority of YouTubers who are trying to put out a video every week, if he put all that effort into a video every 6 weeks, way more people were gonna see it, way more people were gonna enjoy it and share it with others, because it was such a crazy concept and crazy execution of that concept. And so I'm actually on the lower volume, higher effort per piece train. And the reason why I'm saying lower volume and not higher quality is, again, quality is subjective. Now, over time, you get to a point where you know what your audience deems as quality. So you could use the term higher quality content. I just don't like to say it because I don't want to confuse you and make you think that I know what quality is. I don't. You do. So back to LinkedIn. What I want you to do is focus on putting more effort per piece of content you do. Now, what do you do more of? Well, if we've been doing 5 posts a week, for example, we have a pretty good insight on what topics and what kind of structure or formats people on the platform are resonating with and preferring. So one, we can just do less of the other shit and more of that. But here's another little hack for you. Look at the top 10% performing content. Take the last 90 days, for example. Or if you've only been posting for 30 days, take the last 30 days. Whatever amount of time that you can do up to 90 days. And what I want you to do is identify your top 10% content. And then what I want you to do is study the fuck out of it. And what you're looking for is not all these different things that you think could have been the reason why it performed well. What you're looking for is what occurred in all of these pieces of content that I can then replicate and put into every piece I do moving forward. If it exists in only 1 or 2, then it's kind of a crapshoot. But if you identify, and usually you're only gonna find 1, maybe 2 things. If you identify those 1 or 2 things, you raise the probability of your future content performing better than average. And so what you're doing is you're always learning and optimizing off of your top content, not your general content. A lot of people look at everything they're making and they try and extract learnings from it. But why would you want to learn from the bottom 10% or the bottom 20%? I want to always be looking at the top tier performance and how can I replicate these scenarios, these conditions that led to it performing so well. And again, please increase the volume because you see that that platform, that channel is driving more conversions. Again, whatever conversions look like for you. If that's email newsletter signups, if that's more streams to your music, if that's more downloads on your short film on Amazon Prime, whatever it is, I want you to optimize for conversions first. And another question that I get a lot of times is like, if my content isn't performing well, what do? Well, you do what I just said. Even if your content isn't performing super well, there is some content that's performing better than others. And so look at the top 10% and study what that is. And I would encourage you to do this on a monthly basis. If you just stick with what the original core findings, okay, cool, you're just optimizing on that. But if every month you reevaluate the top 10%, you're always going to be laddering up. You're always improving off of your best work and learning from your best work rather than sticking with the learnings that you had 6 months ago. So the next thing that we're going to focus on is making your content sustainable. Like we said at the top, this only matters if we stick with it for a long time. That's when we start to get the actual returns on our investment. And so first off, I want to just say you need to be playing for the long term. If you hate video, you're not going to stick with it. So don't fucking do video. Eventually, after making content, maybe as an audio only format or a design focus, or potentially even doing written, you may get comfortable with the idea of putting yourself out there online, getting feedback, and being okay with that feedback. In which case, maybe you'll get more comfortable with the idea of doing video. But if that idea or that concept of filming a video like this with a camera here, camera there, that sounds freaky to most people, I wouldn't push yourself to do it. Again, I want you to ease into this so that it's something that you can do for a very long time. Content creation should be sustainable for years, not months. Now, the next thing is to build a simple content machine. What do I mean by that? Well, we're not Mr. Beast on day one. And so what you need to do is set a baseline of what you are wanting to accomplish. Let's say it's one video every 2 weeks for YouTube, and maybe it's posting 3 shorts a week on Instagram and YouTube Shorts. Cool, that's simple. Now what we can do is consistently do that. And if we do it for 2 or 3 months, then what we can do is raise the bar and increase the volume that we want to make. Some people find batching content to be highly effective for them. Some people will literally block a 12-hour day and film 3 or 4 YouTube videos, some shorts, and a couple podcasts. And if that works for you, amazing. What I have observed, again, not a rule, just an observation, is for a lot of individuals, this puts a lot of pressure on the day. And if you find yourself feeling that pressure, a lot of times, again, what I have observed is that that causes poor performance on the day of filming because they feel so much pressure, they get anxiety, they end up getting sick, or all these crazy things start popping up, rather than having it be more of a low pressure environment where maybe you film a video here, a video there. The thing that you need to do is make sure you are aligning your strategy with your calendar and your schedule. What do you have available to you? Do you have time to be able to film it throughout the week, or do you have to batch? If you're in a scenario where you have to batch content, what I would recommend is ensuring that the team you're working with is a team that can make the environment conducive for you to deliver your best content. Which leads me to the next point, which is remove yourself from the execution. And we're gonna go really deep on this one. Out of all of these different points within the make it sustainable section here, this is where we're gonna spend the majority of the time. If you can afford it, or as soon as you can afford it, please invest in building a team. Now, I'm gonna go really in depth on this in the next chapter or the next section of this course here, where we literally talk only about team. But if you have the capital, if you have the resources to do it, I encourage you to invest in this immediately. Now, this might look like hiring freelancers in the beginning or agencies that you work with, something that's a little bit more minimal on the upfront cost and allows you to test and make sure that you're getting a positive ROI so then you can reinvest and redeploy capital into furthering and building out your team. Now, about the team. Something that I have observed is that filming content is hard for the talent. Why is it hard? Well, there's high pressure, right? We're wondering, how is this gonna perform? Am I gonna be able to deliver this and make a great piece of content off of it? Yeah, sure, that's the natural. But then there's also these like crazy questions that pop up. When you're staring into the camera lens and you're saying all this shit, you're wondering, is this actually interesting? Is it valuable? Are people going to actually learn and change their actions based on what I'm sharing? Are they enjoying this? Is this boring? These are all natural questions that come up. And so that happens during the film session. Then oftentimes, and I'm sure if you're listening to this or watching this and you've filmed content, you're resonating with what I'm saying. You drive home, and on the drive home, you're like, fuck, I could have done so much better. That was not very good. And you're going through all of these like inner critic monologue that you're having with yourself. Here's how I solve this issue. I make sure that the team that is around the film session, that is around the content creation, makes it easier for you, not harder for you. What do I mean? Well, I have an entire playbook on how to go about creating an environment to make your talent feel comfortable. So for those of you who are building your brand and trying to get a team around you, this playbook will be fucking gold. For those of you that are the content creators behind the scenes that are trying to improve how you capture content with your talent, this will be fucking gold. And I'm gonna walk you through it just a little bit at a high level. But again, I would encourage you, download it, study it, study it, study it. I believe that it is not the content creator's job to create the right environment. It's the team's job. And so it starts, in my opinion, with the videographer. Now, to solve the problem of you wondering if what you're saying is interesting, what you need is a videographer who gives you visual feedback as you are filming. So what I started to notice that I just naturally would do when I was filming with talent is I would nod my head when they were saying something good. Now, as what they were saying escalated, it got better and better and better, the intensity in which I nodded my head would increase. And it sounds funny, but every single person I've ever filmed with actually commented on this and would tell me how much it reinforced what they were saying. They knew, oh, okay, this is a good moment. I'm gonna go deeper on this. And so what you're doing is you are giving them real-time feedback, because the difficulty with creating content is the feedback loop. It can be fairly quick with social media, of course, but it's still pretty extended. We're gonna film this video and this course will not drop for a minimum of 6 weeks. I mean, that is the earliest it'll drop from when we filmed it. So I won't get any feedback from you, the audience, which is who I care about the most, for 6 weeks minimum, probably more like 2 months. But what I am getting is Trevor behind the camera is nodding his head. Or when I say something that he thought was really good, he's putting a thumbs up and letting me know that's some good shit. One, maybe I'm gonna double down and go further on it and dive deeper. But two, I just know that what I'm saying isn't boring as fuck. This is incredibly empowering and enabling for the talent that you are working with. It literally changes the way that they deliver their message. These are all tactics that ladder up to the principle of making a conducive environment to capture great content. Okay, so all the tactics flow out of this principle. And one of them is when they're done saying something great, when you take a break, when a take is over, go up and give them a fist pound or a high five. I've been doing it my whole career. I've been the guy behind the scenes doing it. And now I am in front of the camera in this very intimidating environment. And every time that we take a break, Trevor's coming up and giving me a fist pound and saying that was great, and then calling out one or two things that I said that he thought really stood out. I've been doing it for years, but as somebody who is now on the receiving end of it, I can't tell you how fucking effective this is. It's unbelievable because one, it keeps my momentum going. I'm tired. We've been filming this for a long time. I'm exhausted. It literally gives me energy. And I would see it with talent that I've worked with, where I remember I would see their energy starting to fade. And then I, behind the camera, would just increase my energy. Even if I was exhausted, I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna figure it out. And they match that. And so what you want is you want a team around you that is trying to make your environment or the environment you're filming in the easiest possible for you to communicate the message you have within you to your audience. The 2.0 version of this is not only are they giving you daps, giving you praise when you're doing a good job, they are also thinking through the frame of a skeptic. They're thinking through all of the objections that your audience is gonna have when they consume the content. And just like a good video sales letter, a VSL on your website overcomes sales objections that maybe the prospect would bring to the salesperson on the call, you're overcoming those in the video before they even get on the call. And I like to think of really well done content as accomplishing the same thing. What we're doing after each section here is Trevor and I are sitting down and going, okay, what are some areas that we could poke holes in? What context do we need it? What questions can we answer for you guys before you even ask it? Because ultimately, I believe if you do that, you are going to build greater trust with the audience. You make it easier for them to trust what you are saying and then take action on it. One more tactic on this, because I think it's really helpful, and then the rest I'm gonna leave for you to study in the playbook, is once the film session is done, 15 to 20 minutes after, I always would send a message to whoever I filmed with telling them how great I thought they did. Now, if it was a rough film session, I wouldn't lie. What I would say is, I am so impressed with how you showed up and still pushed through despite this, this, and this. You never want to bullshit your talent because eventually they pick up on it and they realize okay, a compliment from so-and-so never is actually that helpful because they don't mean anything they say. So you want to always be truthful about it. But the reality is if you've had a really fucking hard day, if I got an email from a partner of ours and it was really bad this morning, that would throw me off. So maybe it wouldn't be the best video ever, but it'd be impressive that I still showed up and decided to do the action regardless. So you always want either your team, or if you're the team watching this, you want to send your talent a message telling them how well they did. And I would encourage you to call out one or two things they said. This way they really actually know you were paying attention to what they said. It wasn't just like, oh, the lighting was great and all that. No, the content of what was being said was valuable, insightful, and useful for myself, and I know it will be for our greater audience. This then allows them to go on to the rest of their day or into their evening feeling better about what they made. And what that does is, if we believe brand is how we defined it at the beginning of this, that creates an intentional pairing between relevant things, them and good content. And eventually they start to associate that. And so then they start to associate good feelings, excitement, and positivity with film days. A lot of people really hate film days and they really see it on their calendar as like a massive dread. They know it's necessary, but they don't want to do it. What you want is an environment that you look forward to it. When you see film day on your calendar, you want to be excited about it because it's so enjoyable, because the environment is so reinforcing of what you are doing. The next one is to systematize repurposing. Now, real quick, I want to give a big qualifier here. Repurposing content, like for example, what we talked about earlier with the waterfall method. You make a long form piece of content and then you clip micro from it. That is a great way to start. But it is 2025, and we are now at a point where all the platforms are fragmented and behave differently. The best version of content, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but is making content contextual to the platform itself, making it native for TikTok, for Instagram, for LinkedIn, for YouTube long form. And sometimes pulling clips from long form is native, right? Like a lot of podcast clips do really well. More podcast clips don't do well than podcast clips that do. And so if you want predictive power and you want to be certain that the piece is going to do well, the best version is going to be making it contextual to the platform. However, if you are earlier in your efforts here, and I'm talking like first 3 years even, you're probably going to be doing more repurposing. The 2.0 version of this is not just clipping or extracting short form content from long form. It's actually using insights of how content has performed on one platform in one medium and using that to inform new mediums for new platforms. Let me give you an example. There was a client that I was working with a couple years ago, and she had a really powerful statement. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, so it was powerful, but I can't quite remember it, and I apologize. She put it out as a tweet. That was it. We put it out as a tweet, and so many people were responding to it. It was one of her top performing, like most liked tweets of all time. So many responses, so many people sharing that tweet to their stories and tagging her. And so we thought we had something here. This is called social listening. We paid attention to what the audience was saying. They were calling this quality. They're like, this is fucking quality, y'all. So what did we do? We tripled, quadrupled, five-tupled, whatever that word is, down on this. And what we did is we then created a short. And we had her expand on this statement. We used literally the tweet as the hook, and then she explained why she came up with that quote, why she said that, what the story was, what the scenario she was going through that inspired that quote. Next, we actually created a poster of the quote, and we put it up in a very cool, aesthetically pleasing environment, and we took a photo of it. Like I said earlier, if you were paying attention, something that does really well, this is a tactic, not a principle, but something that does really well right now is taking a photo of a real life thing, whether it's like you're writing on a Post-it note or it's a printed, quote or whatever. That is doing really well on social. So what we did is we printed the quote, took a photo of it, posted it, and it was one of, if not her top performing Instagram post of all time. So then what we did is we turned it into a longer form, hashed out LinkedIn post. So we took the quote and we used that as the hook because it had been proven effective on Twitter. It had, well, now X, but it was Twitter at the time. And it had been proven effective on Instagram, on YouTube Shorts, on TikTok. It did well everywhere. So we're like, cool, we're not gonna fuck around with the hook. We're just gonna keep it the same. So we did that, and then we had her expand on it, right? We took a little bit of what she said in the short form clip, and then we had her add or round it out, add more commentary, more color commentary to it. That fucking performed really well. It was definitely a top 3, if not her top post on LinkedIn. So then guess what we did? We used that to inform making a YouTube long form video on this entire quote. And so what we did is we utilized, I think we did a version of the quote as the title. YouTube, you kind of have to play the YouTube-y game. But what we did is we used that And it informed I think it was like a 25, 30-minute video. It was probably in her top 10. I don't want to say that it was her top video. It wasn't. But it was in the top 10. It performed really fucking well. How incredible that we started with a tweet. And what started as a tweet developed into some of the top performing content for all of her platforms. But did you notice what we didn't do is just repost the tweet everywhere? We made that tweet and remade it contextual to what the needs of the platforms were at the time. If you're listening or watching this right now, please rewind, or I'll just say it again. Make the content contextual to the platform. Reverse engineer what the platform is telling you it wants and what its users want, and make it in that way. It can be the same exact message, but repackaged differently. An analogy that I love to use, and I'll probably share it multiple times throughout this course, is you watching this. You are you, okay? Wow, what a breakthrough statement, but you are you. But you show up to different scenarios and circumstances differently. Let's say, for example, you're going and getting brunch with your family on Saturday. And then Saturday night, you're gonna go out and meet up with the ladies and go out for cocktails. And then Monday morning, you have a business meeting. You, let's say your name is Sarah. Sarah is showing up to all of these different circumstances, events, as Sarah. But the reality is Sarah is going to talk about different topics and speak with a different tone and probably use different vocabulary given the different scenarios. That's not her being inauthentic. That is her revealing different parts of herself contextual to the environment she is in. Knowing her audience is what she's doing. Well, social media is the exact same thing. All the platforms are just these different events that you're going to. So you show up as you. Sarah shows up as Sarah on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all of them. But you reveal different parts of yourself. You emphasize different parts and you use different vocabulary because you're in a different environment. That's what it looks like to create contextual content to the platform you're on. And then lastly, I would encourage you, define your energy rhythm. And this sounds like so woo-woo and blah, blah, blah. But really what it is it's knowing thyself, okay? It's knowing I perform best, I have the most amount of energy and clarity of thought in the morning, or I'm way better late at night. Whatever is your best time, I would encourage you to schedule your content creation around that. For me, I know that probably around midday, I start to get a little tired. So in the morning is my best shit, midday, and then towards the end of the day, I start picking back up. And so I try to plan accordingly to that. If I were really good at night and I sucked in the morning, I was just all groggy and clear, I wouldn't film in the mornings, right? Because not only would I not enjoy it, it wouldn't perform as well. And so just look at where you find your most optimal times, where you feel most dialed, and schedule your content sessions around that. And a sub point to that is protect your creative and your content time, just like it's an important business meeting. Something that I've seen a lot of people do is kind of deprioritize this, and they move their content day around all the time. And I understand, very important shit if you're running a business, or if you're an artist and you're meeting with a potential buyer for your painting or whatever. Sure, that's very important. And that I would prioritize over your content creation. But I would tell you that unless you have a very mature team, more than likely what will happen over time is if you continue to reschedule and push off content days, unless they're very mature and they've been around this for a while, they're gonna interpret it like it is not a priority for you. And if it's not a priority for you, it's gonna become less of a priority for them. And so the way that you show up oftentimes will dictate, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, how your team shows up for you.